For years, the world believed Prince Harry sacrificed everything for love. His home, his role, his future inside the royal family. To the public, it looked like the purest form of devotion. A prince choosing love over legacy. A man walking away from a crown for the woman he believed was his destiny. But what if that story was never complete? What if the decision that changed Harry's life wasn't driven by love, but by urgency? What if everything, from the rushed engagement to the sudden wedding, was set in motion by one sentence written far too early? Because deep inside royal archives, long before the world celebrated their fairy tale, there was an email. Formal, carefully worded, never meant for public eyes, and buried inside that email was a detail so unsettling that even seasoned palace staff froze when they read it. A detail that didn't match the timeline, didn't match reality, and shouldn't have existed at all. This is not a story about gossip. It's a story about how a single belief, left unquestioned, can quietly rewrite an entire life. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. For years, the world believed Prince Harry would defend Meghan Markle no matter the cost. He gave up his home, his royal duties, his titles, and ultimately his place within his own family, just to stand beside her. To the public, it looked like devotion in its purest form. A man choosing love over legacy. A prince walking away from a crown for the woman he believed was his destiny. But something has changed. Inside royal circles, far from cameras and carefully curated statements, a quiet storm has been building. Not a storm caused by Meghan, as many once assumed, but by Harry himself. Because recently, Harry made a decision that shocked even those closest to the palace. A decision that blindsided Meghan and exposed cracks in their marriage that can no longer be ignored. According to Harry, it all began years ago with a single email. One message, one sentence, a small slip of truth that revealed the entire illusion their marriage had been built upon. And once you understand what that sentence truly meant, the story looks very different. This is not simply a marriage with problems. This is a marriage built on a fault line, and the ground beneath it has finally begun to shake. To understand how it started, we have to go back. February 2018. At the time, the world had no idea anything was wrong. Headlines were glowing, the engagement had been announced, and the royal fairy tale appeared to be unfolding perfectly. But behind palace walls, something strange was happening. Prince Harry sent an official email, a formal message written carefully, professionally, the kind that would later become legal evidence in court. On the surface, it looked routine, protective, almost boring. Nothing about it raised alarms for the general public. But buried inside that email was one sentence that made seasoned palace staff feel a tightness in their chest the moment they read it. Harry wrote that he couldn't begin to explain what it would say about the institution if the matter wasn't resolved before the baby's arrival and the wedding. At first glance, it sounded responsible, even noble. A man concerned about protecting both his future family and the monarchy. But there was a problem, a very big problem. In February 2018, there was no baby, no announcement, no visible pregnancy, no medical confirmation, no rumors, nothing. So why was Harry speaking about a baby's arrival months before the wedding when no pregnancy had ever been publicly confirmed? There were only two possible explanations. Either Harry was imagining a future child, speaking in hope, projecting forward, or Harry believed a baby was already on the way. And the tone of his email made the answer painfully clear. It didn't sound hopeful. It sounded urgent. It sounded anxious. It sounded like a man racing to contain a crisis before the world discovered it. That single sentence became the spark, the tiny crack that revealed a much larger truth Harry never intended to expose. Because if Meghan had told Harry she was expecting, then everything that followed suddenly made sense. Once that email reached palace inboxes, confusion spread quietly through the halls. According to whispers inside royal offices, Meghan had told Harry she was pregnant. And Harry, deeply in love, emotionally vulnerable, and fiercely protective, believed her without hesitation. Why wouldn't he? Harry had always loved completely, blindly. He carried old wounds, especially from the loss of his mother. When he loved, he trusted with his whole heart. But inside the palace, things didn't add up. There were no doctor visits, no medical paperwork, no scheduled appointments. Only Harry's voice, repeating the same line again and again. And this is where everything begins to fracture. Because years later, when palace officials looked back at that email with fresh eyes, one thing refused to make sense. Not the wedding date, not the speed of the engagement, not even the emotional intensity. It was the timing. Harry wasn't speaking in hope. He wasn't speculating about a future family. He was racing against something. A deadline, a looming arrival that shaped every decision, every demand, every ounce of pressure placed on the palace. But here's the problem. At that moment in time, there was no baby, no confirmation, no medical record, no visible pregnancy, nothing. So why was Prince Harry acting like time was running out? Why did every conversation circle back to the same unspoken fear? And why did that fear vanish completely once its purpose had been served? That question, more than any accusation, changed how the palace viewed everything that followed. Because once urgency disappears, only consequences remain. It needs to be resolved before the baby arrives. That phrase echoed through late-night phone calls, urgent meetings, whispered conversations, and tense offices. It was as if the entire palace had been pushed onto a countdown clock no one else could see. And Harry grew more desperate with every passing day. He wasn't acting like a prince anymore. He was acting like a man running out of time. Every decision became urgent. Every delay sent him spiraling. Every question felt like a threat. Behind the scenes, an unspoken question began to grow louder. If Meghan was pregnant, why couldn't anyone else confirm it? But Harry wasn't ready to ask that question. Trust had already taken the wheel, and once trust becomes emotional, it stops listening to reason. That trust would change the course of his life forever. The speed of Harry and Meghan's engagement stunned even royal veterans. They had known each other barely a year when Harry insisted the wedding couldn't wait. Not next year, not after careful planning. It had to happen now. Royal marriages are usually slow, deliberate, bound by tradition and background checks that take years. But Harry pushed everything into a 6-month sprint. Protocol bent, schedules collapsed, staff scrambled. Even the Queen, calm and measured as ever, asked for clarification more than once, and every time, the same pressure points surfaced. It needs to be done before the baby arrives. That phrase became the engine driving the wedding. The reason decisions were rushed, the reason traditions were overlooked, the reason no one dared slow the process down. Meghan appeared calm, radiant, composed. Harry appeared tense, emotional, frantic. Behind the perfect photographs, another picture was forming, a prince racing toward a wedding he believed he had no choice but to complete. A marriage built not on certainty, but urgency. And if the baby that pushed him toward the altar never existed, then the love story he thought he was protecting may never have existed either. By March 2018, something strange happened. The whispers stopped. The panic vanished. The baby emergency that once dominated every conversation simply disappeared. According to quiet murmurs inside royal circles, Meghan told Harry she had lost the baby, a private heartbreak never shared with the public. But the timelines didn't match, not even close. Harry didn't act like a man grieving a loss. He acted like a man relieved that the storm had passed. When Archie was born in May 2019, nearly 2 years later, the math collapsed completely. There was no connection, no possible overlap, and that was the moment the palace realized something vital. Harry's urgency hadn't been rooted in reality. It had been rooted in belief. And belief, when combined with love and fear, is one of the strongest forms of control that exists. From that moment on, patterns became impossible to ignore. Meghan moved through situations with 3 distinct masks. When she wanted sympathy, she became the victim. When she wanted loyalty, she became the partner. When she wanted power, she became the star. And Harry responded perfectly to each one. He defended, he followed, he dimmed himself. By the time May 2018 arrived, the machine couldn't be stopped. The wedding happened, the cameras flashed, the world celebrated. But inside the palace, many felt a chill instead of joy. They remembered the panic. They remembered the rush. They remembered the baby that vanished from every conversation once its purpose had been served. When Harry said, "I do," the urgency disappeared. Its job was done. Years later in California, the silence inside their mansion grew louder than any palace hallway. Meghan thrived. Harry faded, and everything traced back to that one sentence, before the baby's arrival and the wedding. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a reminder. It was a prophecy. Harry wasn't tricked by lies alone. He was tricked by hope. The hope that love would heal everything broken inside him. Sometimes the real tragedy isn't being fooled by someone else. It's realizing you fooled yourself. The cameras still flash. The smiles remain polished. But Harry walks beside her quietly now, replaying the moment that changed everything. Cracks in a marriage don't begin with scandals. They begin with a sentence. And Harry's sentence has been echoing for years. And the realization didn't arrive all at once. It never does. It came in fragments. In moments so small they almost felt insignificant at the time. A pause that lingered too long after a sentence. A decision made without him being consulted. A smile that appeared on cue, but disappeared the moment the cameras turned away. Harry began to notice how often his role was to react rather than lead. How frequently his emotions were framed as problems to be managed instead of signals to be heard. When he expressed discomfort, it was reframed as trauma. When he questioned direction, it was reframed as fear. Slowly, subtly, his instincts were explained away before he could trust them himself. That is how control works when it is wrapped in empathy. No raised voices, no visible commands, just gentle redirection, repeated often enough that resistance feels unreasonable. Harry started to doubt his own reactions. He wondered if his unease was simply old wounds resurfacing, if his confusion was immaturity, if his exhaustion meant he wasn't doing enough emotional work. He tried harder, spoke softer, compromised more. But the harder he tried to fix himself, the further away he felt from who he used to be. In the palace, Harry had been impulsive, yes, but also instinctive. He trusted his gut. In California, his gut became something to be questioned, examined, softened, reframed. Over time, he stopped acting on instinct altogether. And that is when the silence became unbearable. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from being constantly surrounded yet emotionally unseen. Harry lived inside that loneliness for years, not because he lacked love, but because love had conditions he didn't fully understand until he was already bound by them. He had given up everything that once defined him, believing he was choosing freedom. But freedom without agency is just another enclosure with better lighting. Occasionally, glimpses of the old Harry surfaced, in interviews where his answers drifted off script, in moments where his frustration leaked through a practiced calm, in rare comments that hinted at regret without ever naming it. Those moments were quickly smoothed over, clarified, recontextualized. The narrative always mattered more than the feeling behind it. As time passed, Harry began to understand something that terrified him. The urgency that once controlled his life was gone, but the consequences remained. The baby that never arrived had already done its work. The wedding had happened. The move had happened. The separation from his family had happened. You don't need a lie to last forever. You only need it to last long enough to lock a door behind someone. When Harry looked back, he didn't see a single moment where he could say no. He saw a series of moments where saying no felt impossible, and that distinction haunted him more than any accusation ever could, because it meant no one had forced him, he had chosen. That truth is far harder to live with. Publicly, the story remained polished. Resilience, reinvention, healing. But privately, Harry began to mourn a version of himself he could no longer access. The soldier, the brother, the son, the man who belonged somewhere larger than his own emotional labor. He missed the structure he once resented. He missed the sense of being needed for more than support. He even missed the constraints, because constraints had given his life shape. In moments of honesty, he understood that what he had run from was not oppression, but limitation. And limitation, unlike chaos, can be grounding. The tragedy wasn't that the fairy tale ended. The tragedy was realizing it may never have been real. That email from years ago didn't just reveal urgency. It revealed how easily love can override discernment when someone is desperate to believe. Harry wasn't manipulated through cruelty. He was guided through reassurance. He wasn't threatened. He was comforted. And comfort, when strategically applied, can be more persuasive than force. Now, when Harry walks beside Meghan, there is a stillness to him that didn't exist before. Not peace. Stillness. The kind that comes from restraint rather than contentment. He listens more than he speaks. He waits more than he acts. He has become careful. The irony is painful. He left the monarchy to escape being managed, only to become emotionally managed in ways far more intimate and invisible. Cracks in a marriage are rarely loud. They don't announce themselves with betrayal or scandal. They form quietly, in moments where one person stops being fully present because presence costs too much. Harry's story is not about blame. It is about consequence, about how a single belief, unexamined, can reshape an entire life, about how urgency can masquerade as destiny, and about how love, when combined with unresolved pain, can become the most persuasive force of all. That sentence he wrote years ago still echoes, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest in a way he didn't understand at the time. Before the baby's arrival and the wedding, there was no baby, but the arrival still came. The arrival of a life he never meant to choose this way. And now the world watches, not for scandal, but for something quieter. For the moment, Harry stops performing resilience and starts reclaiming agency. For the moment, he decides whether the story continues as it is, or whether he finally rewrites it. Because fairy tales don't end when illusions break. They end when someone chooses to stop pretending. If you want to stay ahead of every quiet shift, every hidden decision, and every story the mainstream media avoids, subscribe now and turn on notifications, because power rarely moves loudly. It moves in silence, through emails, rushed choices, and moments the public never sees. And when the consequences finally arrive, they always come before the explanation.